people will be joining as they get along. So welcome to this office hour of today, October 16th, where we'll be talking about the project's API. Today we'll be covering in this session a walkthrough of what the API is and what does it do and why does it matter for you as an app developer, how the API endpoint works, and the ins and outs of the structure of each type of requests. We'll be then handing over to my colleague Likshana, who will be walking through the structure of the different types of requests, the authentication, and running through a sample request in using Postman on how to create a project, as well as linking the transaction and how to track profitability within the project as well. And we'll be then handing over to me, where I'll be talking a little bit about best practices and the key considerations to keep in mind when using the tool, as well as leaving some time at the end of the session for some Q&A. But in the meantime, feel free to join any questions on the chat as we go along. The project API is a way to access an existing tool or an existing section within QuickBooks Online that is already available for some of the customers using the Plus, Advanced, or IES type of accounts. It allows customers to create and manage projects and track profitability against the expenses, as well as monetary income within each specific customers that they manage within the tool. Obviously, customers can already do that manually within the portal, but why was the API created? The API was created to facilitate developers and app developers like yourselves to automate and to remove the possibility of manual errors or manual transactions being not managed properly within the QuickBooks Online. Once the user or the account is dealing with multiple projects, multiple transactions, multiple invoices against multiple customers, so it becomes a very cumbersome aspect. We also allow that to automatically automate the tracking of those transactions and linking that into the projects, also facilitating you to provide a bigger and a greater key of capabilities within your applications. The API allow you to automatically create, read, and manipulate all the projects within a specific QuickBooks account, allow you to retrieve and list all the projects that are being managed within a specific customer, and automatically associate transactions to existing or when creating a new account within the QuickBooks Online interface. The API works into two different sections or two different segments. One is the layer of creating and definition of queries. That's when you use the Graph API endpoint, GraphQL, sorry, API endpoint in order to create a project within QuickBooks. This layer uses two endpoints, transactions within production and sandbox endpoint, allowing you to test your application before sending this into production. And the scopes within the GraphQL request can be added as a project management, meaning a project scope, and within the QuickBooks accounting scope as well. Once the project exists within QuickBooks, you can use the REST API operations in order to manipulate or to add transactions and expenses within QuickBooks into an existing project's entity. And that's using the REST API, and the endpoints is as shown on the screen, and the scope will be including QuickBooks accounting for REST operations. Just a quick reminder, this API is a release for our premium partners using the silver, gold, or platinum tiers. In order to access this, you just need to contact our support team, creating a ticket under the API query or premium API access, requesting that to be added into your account. Once that is available to you, all you need to do is within your app configurations and the permissions, just enable the scope of projects before you start using that on your API requests. I'll be running this now. I'll be handing this now to my colleague Luciana, who will be presenting the structure of the API requests and the different types of requests that can be done, as well as authentication, and running a quick demo for you on how to make those requests and how that run within the scope of the response and the data that is being sent back and forward. Over to you, Luciana. I think you muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hey, thanks, Dan, and thanks everybody for joining the office hours. I'll walk you through the demo for how the project APIs work and what are the scopes and prerequisites that needs to be done before making an project's API call. So the first and the foremost step would be to authorize and authenticate your app with QuickBooks so that you can make the subsequent API calls. And once your authorization flow is done, you would get an access token, which has a lifetime of 60 minutes. So you'll be using this access token to make the subsequent project API call by passing this access token in one of the headers.
Just one question. Make sure you share your screen because I all can see is your e-commerce.
Is it okay now, Dan?
There we go. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so you would have an access token after your authorization flow, and which has a lifetime of 60 minutes. And after 60 minutes, you can use the refresh token to rotate the access token and make the subsequent API calls. And we would need two scopes to make any API request. One would be a project scope, which is for the GraphQL access. The other one is your REST access scope, which is your accounting scope. And we have all of the OAuth related data in our Intuit related documents. You can also refer them for more actions or on more steps on how to do the authorization. And talking about the endpoints and the headers that we'll be using, we will be using both GraphQL endpoints and REST-based endpoints. Your GraphQL endpoints is a single endpoint, and you have two. One is for the production, the other one is for the sandbox. The production one is qb.api.intuit.com, and the other one is qbsandbox.api.intuit.com. And we also have a REST-based accounting API to run through the other entities. And you will need two main headers. One is your content type, which is application JSON. The other one is your authorization header, which is nothing but the access token that you got from your OAuth appended with the bearer, would be a required header to make any API call. So I'll quickly run you through the high level project data module. So to make any project related API call, there are core fields that is necessary. So for projects, you would need your name, your customer ID, the status, start dates, and end dates. Similarly, you have other fields as well where you can refer to the GraphQL Explorer and get an idea on what those fields are. And typically, a project is owned by a customer, which we refer to the client, and all of the transactions will be aggregated with them. For example, you have your sales and your purchase transactions aggregated within that project so that the project owner can track, analyze, and get the profitability of the project. Before you make any API project API call, there are a few pre-checks that you will have to do. So one of them is that you have to ensure that your project is enabled. You can check that through this REST API call preferences. You just run this query and run this API, and You have to look for preferences dot other preferences item and see to it that the project's enabled is true. If it is true, you're good to go. You can make the project's API call. If it is false, you'll have to enable the necessary scopes needed. You can also add this pre-check as a validation in your use case. Moving on to the projects API through GraphQL, as already Dan mentioned, we have create, read, update, and delete operations enabled with the GraphQL projects. And the basic one would be creating a project with GraphQL. So we have this single endpoint for GraphQL to create a project. The necessary headers would be the authorization token and the content type. I have mentioned a below mutation which helps you create a project. It takes the necessary inputs that is required for your project, which is your ID, name, status, the start date and end date. So this will take all the necessary data for you to create a project. Once you run this mutation, you would get a response of your project details, and a project will be created for you on your QBO UI as well. Similarly, we have GraphQLs for reading and listing few projects. The first query is to get one project by its ID. So basically pass the project reference ID and you would get all the necessary details appended with that particular project. And you can also list your project with basic fields such as your ID, name, status. So this would give you a overall all the list of projects that you have linked to that particular customer ID. We also have other operations like update and delete project using GraphQL. With update mutation, you can update your project name, the status of your project. All of those operations can be done. And similarly for delete, you have a mutation where you would be passing your project reference ID, and this project management delete would delete your project ID, delete that particular project linked in your QBO. We have multiple other use cases as I mentioned before. So you can link all of your transactions to a particular project for profitability reporting. So while creating any related transactions via your REST API, let's say, for example, you're creating an invoice, you ensure that you pass the project identifier to the API so that all of the transactions that you make is linked to that particular project, and it would be easy for the project owner to track all of them. So in this case, for projects, you would be using the exact field that is project ref and your project ID, which will link all of your transactions to that particular project. So we have multiple use cases, but I'm showing you one of the use case, which is creating an invoice for a project using your REST. So you have this post call V3 company. So in the realm ID, you would be posting your QBO realm ID. Invoice, you will be passing the necessary headers, and this would be the post data. You have your customer ref. So here this is how you would be using your project's ID if it is supported. And once you make the API call, invoice will be created under that particular project. So this would link your invoice to that project, and then you can run the invoice. So we have a set of tools to test all of your GraphQL APIs. So you have a few, we have a few tools, and those tools are one such tool is your Postman. So I'll quickly show you a demo on how we can port the projects API and make a call through Postman. So you'd be forking this project's API collection, and under that, this is a GraphQL collection, and under that you have your options to query, create, and update. You also have your REST-based examples. So I will create a project with one of the test companies that I have, and I'll show you it on the QBO. Before that, you would need to do the authorization setup. So once you fork your project's API collections, you would have the OAuth, you would be navigating to the authorization section. And in your OAuth collection, you will have to pass your token name. Token name can be of your type. And you have to set a callback URL from your developer account, and you have the authorization URL, the access token URL, and you will have to pass your client ID and client secret. So this client ID and client secret you would get in from your developer.intuit account. Moving to the keys and credentials sections, there you have your client ID and client secret. So you'll just have to copy them and paste it here. And you also have to pass the necessary scopes that you need to make the project's API call, which is your accounting scope and the project management scope. Once this is done, you can try getting a new access token. So this callback would go to the QBO, and here you have to log into your account. And select the company for which you need to create your projects. And once the authorization is successful, you will get your access token here. You can use this token, and then you can go make your API calls. So we have the mutations here, which, as the name suggests, typically creates a project with the input object, which is a name, description, status, customer ID. You also have other options to pass your mail address, your postal address, and all of those. This would create a project for you and return the data for you as well. So I'll create a new project. Make this request. So we've got a successful response with project name. Project office has 3. And you would also get your project ID over here. So you can use this project ID to link your transactions with that particular project. I'll quickly show it on the queue view. So you can also log into your QuickBooks. You can navigate to the projects section, and you see the projects office hours. The project has been created for me. And now I can quickly show you one of the use cases where I'll create an invoice and link it to this particular project. So we have this invoice, which is a REST-based one. So for this, you'll have to pass in the base URL, which is quickbooks.api.intuit.com, and you'll have to pass your realm ID. And the minor version would be 75. So you will have to pass this version while you are making any REST API call, which is the latest version that we have. And this would be the post data that you're doing for the invoice project test. And this is the field that is necessarily you have to add in order for you to link your invoice to the particular project. So here you will be adding the value, the project ID value, and Okay. I just got an error because I gave a different company ID. So you would run into errors like this. Here you will have your message and the details. Based on this, you can act on. And I send this. Sorry for that team. I had a typo in the post data. Hope this works now. Something's wrong with my customer ID. But basically, you would be able to create an invoice. I can show. Sorry, I had a typo issue, and that was the reason for the errors. So I forgot to replace the project ref ID, which is causing the error. So I paste the new project ref ID, and I could see a successful response with the invoice created. So you go back to your projects. And you see we have an open invoice. You can view them and then run the invoice. Yeah. And you also have other use cases for bills, purchases, and you can also filter using date range and by project ID and get all of your details that is needed for your projects. You can also update your project. You can update your project date and also delete. So there are a few use cases that is there under this collections. So I would recommend you to just play around with them and see how it works. Yes, I hope that makes sense. That's it from my end. Over to you now. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you for the demo. It was very thorough. I just wanted to make sure that we take account into some considerations when using the endpoint or then trying to incorporate that into your applications once is availability. Currently, this is available for Silver, Gold, and Platinum partners. As mentioned before, make sure that if you are within those tiers, contact our support team to have that added into account and make sure to enable this scope within your application settings. We do have a sandbox a URL support for this endpoint, so leverage that when building and testing your application to make sure that everything runs smoothly before going with your live credentials. And scope and permissions in make sure that everything is enabled and all the scopes are into your account, as well as within the API request, the scope project, and within the accounting's QuickBooks scope as well. And that should be all you need to consider in order to start developing and testing within the specific endpoint. And we also have a number of tools available to help you with this new endpoint, how to actually build things within your application to leverage this. It has some Postman libraries and some GraphQL Explorer within the developer.intuit.com portal to help you with that. We have some app SDKs being built and some simple apps that will be released soon in the most common requested languages available to you for this specific endpoint, as well as any other endpoints released within the Premium Partner portal. And there are a number of other resources, such as blog posts and support articles in order to help you to understand how to leverage this endpoint within your application and how your customers can use that within the integration of your app and how to troubleshoot and build using this endpoint as a premium partner.